Welcome to another episode of the Truth About Real Estate Investing show. My name is Erwin Cito, and this is the place where us lifelong learners and seekers of truth like to hang out and share about what truly works when investing in real estate. And not just real estate, because I'm personally interested in all forms of predictable, repeatable investing. As long as it's morally and ethically done correctly. For example, I know many investor agents in my market. They promote non-conforming multifamily properties. So that means typically it's a house that's been chopped up into like 2-unit, 3-unit, 4 units, and their legal purpose is not permitted, as in they did the work without permits, nor is the use of the property grandfathered in. I personally know many of these investors who got left holding the bag. They bought these properties without understanding the risks involved. Then they had city inspectors and fire inspectors. They knocked on their door and asked the investors to evict some of the tenants. So that really hurts cash flow when you kick out tenants, or to redevelop the property to make the property safe. Now it comes with pretty significant renovation bills as on top of the process to redevelop a property. I personally don't want that kind of liability in my own portfolio, nor for my clients. I couldn't imagine if my tenant got hurt in a fire, and I prefer to sleep well at night. So instead of that stuff that keeps me up, with all this rain going on, I'm more worried about my basement's flooding. But anyways, my properties are renovated with permits where necessary. As I record this, we are in the first week back to school. My kids are back in person in public school, as the risks, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, folks. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an infectious disease doctor. And not a Google doctor. But my opinion, the risks are low for my kids. I'm satisfied with the safety protocols by our school. And Cherry and I are fully vaccinated. My whole household's vaccinated. For those who are 12 and up. So we're at low risk of being hospitalized. We're pretty okay with the risks involved. And for any concerned parents like myself, the news out of Denmark is that they started school last month. Their R value fell to 0.7, which means that the rate at which people are being infected by COVID is falling, which is great news. Stats-wise, the Danes are 80% vaccinated versus we are 77%. For those eligible, Denmark is dropping all restrictions as of September 10th. So they'll have dropped all restrictions by the time you listen to this. And fingers crossed, our situation continues to improve and will be along those same lines in Canada. This news gives me peace of mind. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but Denmark, they went back to school last month. So if history repeats itself, my kids will be safe, and we won't see any increased restrictions. Maybe we'll even see reduced restrictions here in Canada. Ireland also has a similar story. Adults there are 90% fully vaccinated, and their restrictions end next month. Again, my prediction is our own restrictions will end hopefully sometime this fall, and so Cherry and I can go back to hosting as many people as we want in person at our iWin real estate and stock hacker meetups. That way we can go back to supporting our community as best we can, which I believe means meeting in person and networking in person. Plus, when we do our big conference, which we plan to host over 2,000 people, hopefully we're legally allowed to do that. And we'll also do for the time being at least, we'll be simulcasting events. We'll live stream and host events in person. Apparently I have to do a Zoom update as well. Anyways, in the meantime, we're currently allowed 25 people in person at our offices, so that's what we'll make do with for our monthly iWin meetings. And those will be available, like I mentioned, we'll do them live and in person, so we'll have a live audience, and we'll stream it via Zoom. So for anyone who feels safer at home or they don't want to make the commute, that's available to you all. As usual, I'll share about the happenings in the world, both macro and micro economically, so that everyone's armed with the information needed to make decisions with their investments. My team members, Tammy DiTommaso and Chris Hook, will be sharing the latest on market rents, prices, the latest tips and tricks in operating a real estate business, which usually means around like screening tenants, where lead times are for major renovations. Just recently, my team was discussing about what window vendors to use, because there's certain manufacturers have lead time issues. So we'll have to be talking about that stuff as well. Our keynote speaker for September is none other than the hottest speaker on the circuit in the real estate world. And that happens to be real estate accountant Cherry Chan, CPACA, who is sharing the best practices for bookkeeping for the real estate investor. October will be more of the same, except that you will all be stuck with me doing the keynote talk, which it will be regarding the 4 cash flow quadrants by explaining the theory behind it and also what Cherry and I have found to be the best practices of progressing from being an employee and self-employed to becoming a business owner or investors. If you're on my email list already, then you're already getting my emails with the dates and links that you can register. If you don't, also, you'll have the choice to attend in person or to attend virtually. We really do like networking in person, so that'd be my preference. If you're not on my email list, then that's just silly. You can join the tens of thousands of Canadians already receiving our free newsletters at www.investortraining.ca. From there, you can get access to my presentation that I gave at the last Wealth Hacker Conference in front of 1,500 people plus. And that's for free. Again, that's www.investortraining.ca. And soon enough, I'll have a link for you to get my new book. Before I forget, we did just return from the cottage that we rented a week ago, and I left my laptop at home. So my only work device really was my smartphone. I don't go far without it, and I still managed to stock hack my way to a over $3,000 US in realized profits. That's more than enough to pay for that cottage rental costs. Past, of course, does not predict the future. But if you'd like to learn more about how this game-changing skill that I learned largely over the pandemic and many others have, check out my final demonstration, free demonstration I'll be giving on September 23rd. Again, it's my final demonstration before we deliver our next Stock Hacker Academy, which starts October 1st for beginners. We have with us best-selling authors Lee Lowell and Derek Foster from Ottawa, Ontario, and we hope to see you there. On to this week's show. We have with us the lovely Kayla Andrade. Hopefully by now you real estate investors know who Kayla is. She's been running a not-for-profit grassroots organization called Ontario Landlord Watch to bring us landlords together to support one another and mobilize politically to inform the powers that be the challenges that we small private investors face in creating more housing supply and to help the good tenants that are out there. Kayla shares why her family emigrated from Newfoundland to Ontario. I asked her to share this story because I don't know if people understand how high in demand the hot spots in Canada are. Ontario, specifically the areas around Toronto, Vancouver, BC. Hear it from someone else who lived it. Their family picked up everything and moved to one of the hottest real estate markets in the world. Anyways, but that's not the way they moved. They moved for other reasons. I'll let her explain. Kayla explains the changes in policies that we landlords need to watch out for and how to escalate problems that we face at the Landlord Tenant Bureau. Plus, we chat about Landlord Credit Bureau, which is a service that helps tenants build their credit and hold them accountable to paying rent on time. If you've never heard of them, please check them out. These guys are a game changer. I've signed up and I wish I knew about this service years ago so I could hold those tenants who roughed up my properties so I could hold them accountable. Please enjoy the show. Hi, Kayla. How are you?
Good, Erwin. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Oh, I thank you for having me.
And my question is, what's keeping you busy these days?
Everything.
I don't know how you find the time.
Yeah, it's well, you know what? With 4 kids, ranging from 17, 12, 8, and almost 2. Having our own property management business that I started last year. I've been asked to do it for 10 years, and I finally caved with my good friend Jen and Greg, just giving me that extra nudge that I needed because I love helping landlords. I like helping them grow. I like protecting them, and I like matching good tenants with good landlords. So, and then I became the national ambassador to Landlord Credit Bureau. And I'm also sitting on a subcommittee for affordable housing and homelessness for the city of Cambridge to get a deep understanding of what they think the issues are, what their solutions are, and I can give an investor feel or expertise towards their thinking process.
We will get to that. You've said a mouthful, and I'm tired just thinking about it.
A lot of hats.
Now, before we were recording, we were talking about your family story, how you moved to Ontario, and I think it's an important story to tell because, we have tons of people coming into the area, and their story is not that different. So, how did you arrive in Ontario?
So I came at the age of 11. So prior to us arriving here in Ontario, my dad and my older sister had came up to look for jobs, while my mom and my two other sisters and my nephew actually stayed in Newfoundland until they found a house. Once they found a nice little apartment in Preston and Cambridge, we got the call to start heading on the planks. We stayed with my grandmother at the time, and it was great. We lived in Preston, little tiny apartment, and then we moved into another bigger place while my dad ended up working for a flour factory, and he used to come home like he hated the job. He was covered in flowers so bad.
Oh, like wheat, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like flower, like roses.
No roses.
That'd be kind of nice.
Yeah. And then he finally got a good job working as a welder, and that really gave us a good go to get us, ahead in life. But still, raising a big family, there was like 6 of us, so we were actually renters at one time in housing. So we had government housing that my parents were living in, just because the prices of rent then was absolutely crazy.
Sorry, you were living in government housing when?
With my family. So as my family was...
In Newfoundland?
No, in Ontario.
In Ontario, okay.
Yeah, even in Newfoundland too, if you think about it.
What?
Newfoundland was really tough of a place to really survive in. A lot of things.
Well, yeah, the weather's trying to kill you.
The weather is trying to kill you. It definitely is. And they also have the cost of living. So with their heating, they don't have gas heating. So the hydro is absolutely crazy down there for heating your homes. And then you got the price of food. So a lot of things are being, shipped in. And I still keep in touch with my best friend ever since kindergarten down there. And the price that they pay for food is, I'm trying to get her up here so bad. I'm like, just come on. But you can't take a Newfie girl. You can take a girl off the rock, but you can't take the Newfie out of the girl, or how it goes. We can't get her up here for the life of her.
Because food's getting expensive.
I know.
Is it just worse out there?
Oh yeah.
Because I see food prices, I buy a steak, for example, it's easily 20 to 30% more, since the pandemic started.
Yeah.
I never thought about these things, but heating. What did you guys do for heat in Newfoundland?
Well, you just
coal? What?
Well, you tend to put a little bit more socks on, but again, you get a couple of pairs of socks. But then again, it's like when it's cold, it's not as cold as it is in Ontario. Ontario is really to the bone cold. You get cold in Newfoundland, but it's not as bone cold as it is in Ontario. Okay, well, I think we're going for a road trip, aren't we? Me and you.
I've never
Let's
been
go.
because it's a bit of a ways.
Totally worth it.
But what did your family do for a living, living in Newfoundland?
Well, my dad worked in the fishery. So my dad and my mom worked into the fishery. So once there was massive layoffs in the fishery, that is when struggle times have happened for them, and that's why they had to make the decision to stay there and to stay in in need of assistance for not only for housing but also food. You had to call churches at that time to just try to feed us. That's how it was when they got laid off, and they said, okay, we're not going to live like this anymore. And my dad had a brother up here in Ontario, so he ended up was able to connect him to that job where they made flour. And then we had a good go since, and we're lucky that they made the move, because Newfoundland is still tough. Yeah,
the weather's still trying to kill you.
It is.
So your family story is not that different from the people that are coming into the area of southwestern Ontario, Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge. People are coming from all over the world and all parts of Canada to find opportunity.
Oh yeah, and Ontario has that. It has many, many different opportunities and many different jobs that you can, experience and get skills in, and the schooling is really well too, and you have more, government programs that can help you get that.
Right.
Newfoundland, not so much.
So you're a landlord and a property manager in You cover all Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge,
Yep, Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo. Sometimes Brantford.
and sometimes Brantford.
Sometimes.
So what jobs do these tenants have that are coming in? The ones that you're seeing, the ones that you're the ones that you're signing, the ones that you're seeing.
You know what? I've gotten a lot of nurses. I get nurses, I get PSWs, I get people who are software developers, who are engineers. Like, people have some really good jobs that are coming, and you only get a few. I think the people who are in a job that doesn't pay a lot of money but in a secure rental, they're staying because they know that the price of the rent is really good. But yeah, we have a lot of people making really good jobs. And then what I see too is that we have a lot of clusters. So a lot of people are just working professionals who are friends, and they're starting to live together. So we're seeing 5 to 6 people. So I think this whole rooming house situation is starting to be a real part of an investment strategy,
Right.
in order to kind of curb that affordability that people are looking for.
So you'll have like 5 people come up to you and like want to rent a house?
Oh yeah, sometimes 7. 7, yeah. And
How old are these people? They're not kids, are they? Like, I mean, like university age?
They're just out of university.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of university, you'll start to see that still. And it's and honestly, some of them are with their, coming over first, newcomers. They're coming, so they're here doing the same thing like my dad did. Getting an apartment, and then it's only the 2 of them, but they know they have family that is going to be coming. So now there's more people that are going to be in need of housing, so they have to get the bigger units, and that's what they're struggling to find right now is bigger units to rent, because we see a lot of single family homes now coming off the market and being either scooped up as a duplex, being able to create a duplex, or it's being sold where the new owner is actually wanting to move into it.
Yeah, it's tough times because no one's building anything.
No, it's too costly. You see the price of wood over the pandemic.
Well, it's not even that. I still think most developers would still build if it was easier.
It has to be easier. And it is the red tape. It's the red tape from different levels of government, and it's the cost of obviously building supplies, and it's going to be a struggle for them. So they are going to look in other areas. And then you have like cities and municipalities that introduced landlord licensing. With Hamilton just got hit.
Yeah, that'll encourage more rentals.
Oh yeah, let's go there to Hamilton, guys. Like, come on.
That'll encourage the small landlord, won't it?
You know why they do it though.
NIMBYism, mostly. I can't imagine it's like, if you're the city councilor, I don't know if it's more work for you to have more, because they're going to hire like 10 more staff to do this.
It's going to be a cost to run a program like this, and
I think it's 10 million.
And we already have something though, because if you have a tenant who felt that they have an unsafe apartment,
Yeah, they can just call.
they can call
Yeah.
bylaw and they come out.
Or the fire department.
Yeah.
They're very responsive.
They're good
I
too.
know.
Or they can call Landlord and Tenant Board. They can get
call
their
them.
application.
Yeah, they can call property standards. They can call a health department.
And what they did, they just really hurt their students, that student industry, because that's where their pilot program that's going to happen for 2 years is going to happen. So now we have students who are trying to get an education, going in debt to get that education. Now they're going to have to pay more for rent, because landlords will incorporate what that fee is to license that rental unit. They have to incorporate it into the rent as the tenants relocate.
But the NIMBYs don't care.
No.
That's not coming out of their pocket.
No.
They're just, voting against the poor.
Anything the government touches... Finish the sentence, guys.
They do some good, right? Some things are great. Then
like what? Give me one.
Here's one I was going to mention. I had the gentleman from Lanescape, who are they design laneway housing in Toronto, right? So one of the nice things the Toronto government has done is you can have a laneway house by right, meaning you don't have to put up signs or anything. You just have to get your permits, submit your drawings, all that sort of stuff, start building. You don't have to, your tenant, and then your neighbors can't even complain. They can complain, but it's already started.
Yeah.
They really can't stop you, right? Because you can have that by right.
Yep.
And they're saying hopefully within a year, in Toronto will be able to have garden suites by right, meaning we don't have the minor variance, nothing, right? Neighbors can't complain. You're doing it.
They've had that in the works for a little bit, changing that, because
Right.
it used to have to plaster it, sign on your lawn, sign in your house, any tenant, any neighbors upset about it, and same thing in Cambridge. And they're going to start to stop that. You know, the city, your community members are not going to be able to stop you from doing it. But they still were also looking at a huge hefty amount for the permit. Well, they've dropped that, so the permit's a little bit cheaper. But again, it doesn't stop the loops that you have to go through the requirements.
You're talking about building tiny homes in Cambridge?
Tiny homes, secondary suites, doing
Right.
like that. That's where I think the city of Cambridge is starting to kind of understand this is a supply and demand issue that we're seeing with affordable housing. Well, we really need you to, let us go.
Yeah.
It's more about if it's safe, it's built the way it is. If there was an inspection, you got to learn how to shut that down. If it was built improperly or unsafe. But
That's fair, yeah.
if you look at the concept that they do it and they talk about affordable housing, they talk about our homeless population. Well, what's happening with our homeless population? They're in tents. They're on the river. They're at the shelters. They're in emergency shelters and motels that are costing
They're in the football stadiums.
$3,000 a month for a taxpayer to pay for one person to stay in a motel. A month. That's pretty good money for them to live in permanent, but again, this is just wasted money that is happening because they're not getting to the real issues of how to address it.
Yeah, they're all. So then, what Toronto has done is, because Toronto being like the leading least affordable city in Canada, those who can't afford have actually gotten to be more vocal than the NIMBYs, right? Which is what we need. Almost every city to get to that point.
Toronto, I find, especially with us being about 45 minutes away from Toronto and in KWC areas, that we have a lot of Toronto residents now able to work from home. So they are now coming into our woods, and it's also driving up our rental housing cost of
Right.
rents as well as houses. So you get to see how the pandemic really has changed the world as it is. And with that happening and them allowing these laneway houses and secondary suites and trying to make it a little bit easier for investors to invest, it's definitely going to bring more supply. But again, we have more of the eviction bans that are happening. The RTA is still a mess. The Landlord and Tenant Board is still a mess. Like, I hear so many people who have these homes who can, rent out their basement because it doesn't make sense to downsize anymore. But they don't, because they see of the rules and procedures and the lack of accountability that is happening with our tenants.
Yeah, it's not easy. Yet we're landlords.
We work hard to make sure that it always feels like the tenants always have rights and the landlords don't. And when we want to have rights, then we're greedy landlords to try to ask for rights. That's usually how it falls lately.
Is that what the latest updates are as well? What's new? What's new?
Well, with the news, we got the new. They have a Navigate Tribunals Ontario. So this is a system that they created, which is going to give deep education to either landlord or tenant who are on the site trying to navigate through their situation. That, hey, I'm a tenant, I'm unable to pay rent. There will be another window that, pops up that gives them some recourse. Like, okay, well, one, here is a local service manager. And local service managers is an agency where you can get rent relief. And this is something that I always talk about, because this is something that we really asked the Landlord and Tenant Board to do, because we're landlords bringing our tenants to the Landlord and Tenant Board to evict them. And we wouldn't have to, if we just educated more landlords on how to educate their tenants on how to gain access to government funds in order to have that rent relief. So they were able to incorporate that in through Navigate Tribunals Ontario. They also have different forms that are happening. So landlords who are trying to take over their unit for the personal use of themselves or for buyers, they now have to indicate if you've given this type of N12 notice before in the last 2 years. So they're going to start to track that at the Landlord and Tenant Board. So there's a different L2 application form that you would want to make sure that you fill out, because if not, they can throw that out at the Landlord and Tenant Board at the same time.
Sorry, what's the L2 for?
It's
not 2-4. It's
a 2.
What is it? You know what I mean.
You have the N12. So anytime you have if you have an N4, you got the L1 application. So that's the L forms are what the forms you would file at the Landlord and Tenant Board. The N forms are usually what you're giving to your tenant. So Once you file the N12, the next step to that will be the L2 application. And luckily for our real estate agents who are listening, that if you have a situation for an N12 that needs to be used because A, it's a firm offer, or that and the homeowner who is going to be moving into it, the new homeowner is going to move into the unit, they can actually get their hearing expedited at the Landlord and Tenant Board now. So that way, A, that it doesn't put the landlord in a spot where their deal falls through, and now that buyer could potentially have some, legal recourse in order to take on that buyer because the tenant refused to move out.
Yeah, because it does happen.
So that was a success. I must say that I was shocked I'm like, they were listening because so many deals were falling apart. So many, we've had landlords offer up to, I believe it was $50,000 to a tenant to relocate so that the deal would not fall through. And the tenant refused to take the $50,000. So we have lots of opportunities for cash for keys, but as investors now, we used to do it as a little trick, but now it's becoming, hey, how do you negotiate cash for keys with your landlord? So I'm like, oh God, hey guys, don't be doing that anymore. The system's speeding up a little bit quicker. We went from 12 months waiting for a hearing to 3 months approximately in some areas. And we're supposed to be at 4 to 6 weeks from filing by the end of the year, especially with a new case management hearing, our new case management system that's going to take effect in September.
Now, on the other side, I have clients where they had negotiated, the tenant asked for $10,000 to move out. Right, and my clients probably made like $180,000 like in equity. That's what they're going to take away when they sell it, and they're like, "No, I'm not paying it." Like, you're gotta be nuts, because you're not going to be able to sell this. So it is there's other sides of the story, and I forgot where I was going to go with this. And so my question is also, again, as a landlord and a property manager, what are the reasons you're seeing that people cannot afford rent?
The numbers are jumping high. We're seeing a lot of turnover with buying property, and we're seeing the turnover of now the units being empty, and now they're able to up the rent a lot higher. So if you look
sorry. When you're talking about a non-payment of rent, have you had much experience of tenants not paying rent in the last 2 years or so?
Even for my tenants personally, no, everyone's been really, really good.
Oh,
I haven't with the CERB and pointing them where they can get. We had like one tenant that was behind 2 months, and I pointed them right to the local service managers and was able to pay them that 2 months that he was behind, and then he's been great ever since.
Where's that money coming from?
Us. It's us.
Well, so
let's not talk about it, Erwin.
The CERB is the same thing.
It is.
It's not, maybe not us, it's our grandkids or grandkids.
If you can bail tenants out in hardship situation where you can actually do the homework to make sure that it's actually a hardship situation, you're not just giving it out willy-nilly like this, it's going to work. And it's going to work for a point, keeping them housed and keeping them from being on the street, where as taxpayers it's going to cost us a lot more, from shelters to police services to ambulance to hotels, emergency shelters. So you get it. It just has to be, I think that's when the government goes back into that pilot program, like that extra income that
UBI, universal basic income.
Yeah, we're just going to just give you income, just to keep you afloat.
Okay.
I'm like, do you know how many people actually take social assistance and they have a spouse who actually works and they don't claim it? I'm like, there's a lot of fraud happening within that system too. So if you do create a system, we have to make sure we create it with an iron ring that is well protected, so that it's not being abused. And just like the Landlord and Tenant Board right now, it's being abused.
Yeah, stuff not get abused.
It's always getting
That's operated by government.
Now I know why they're cautious of people. People are already doing the COVID passports and manipulating them. So yeah, it's great.
So you're saying, like, in your clients that you manage, like, you're not seeing much non-payment of rent?
My clients that I've put in are all good. I've taken over a lot of properties where they have obviously refused to pay, and that has been brought to the Landlord and Tenant Board, in which I think it's a lot of that stuff has calmed down now because of COVID. They got evicted. So They're now on
The system worked.
Yeah, like it was.
Hallelujah.
It took a while.
How long?
Like 7 months. 7 months from the time of filing, from getting them out there, and then the Landlord and Tenant Board would say, you know, how much money can you make as a payment plus your regular payment, and they would say, oh, I can make $1,000 extra on top of my rent starting January 1st, and guess what? They don't make it. So now, since they didn't make that payment, now you got to file the L3 or the L4 application. It's L4, so you got to file the L4 application at the Landlord and Tenant Board to inform them that the tenant failed to meet their agreement.
And then how long after that?
And then you have to wait for more papers to come into the mail to give you the order. And then once you receive your order in the mail, which there's a massive delay at the Landlord and Tenant Board because of the order. So one is the delay of hearing, and then you have a delay of orders. So once they finally receive their order, then they have to take the order and bring it into the sheriff's office and be on a wait time with the sheriff. And in Mississauga right now, for my last talk, it's about 6 weeks.
Wait.
It's still great for investing, guys. I'm scaring your
weeks.
listeners.
Sorry, from when you get the order to when you actually have the sheriff shows up is 6 weeks?
Yeah, the wait time at the sheriff is 6 weeks right now at Mississauga.
Oh, that's healthy.
Yeah, so because with all the eviction bans, and then they always have everyone trying to avoid the eviction, so they apply to the board for a stay, which is just saying, oh, okay, it's a stay, sheriff's now put on hold, so once that hearing happens again, then the sheriff is notified, and that in particular case is now put back up a little bit more on the roster and getting it back in as fast as they possibly can, because they already had to put it back for a delay.
Tough times.
You know what? I think it's just about running a nice system that can help the people in need with the rent. If you talk to anyone that, you know, talks about being landlording and what's happening with the tenants, it's going to be non-payment of rent. Non-payment of rent is the number one application that tends to be at the Landlord and Tenant Board. So if we can kind of create that system to give them some help and some guidance and hold them accountable and not allow them to you know, pay your rent first and then worry about the entertainment stuff that after, because some people tend to do that first and then they are struggling with rent and then they're on a downhill spiral.
I wish the system would be more transparent, because if you're a bit of a skeptic, you may think that the government is actually dragging things out, so we delay evictions and then so we just push problems down the road a few months.
You hit it right on the head.
If you're being skeptical, I know I'm an optimist.
That is, it's the dial. I called it as a dial. You know, they had, you know, it really slow and they're monitoring, and then they cut it off completely because that's when there was no hearings happening, no evictions were happening. Then they opened up to online hearings, which now you got a little bit of movement, but again, the eviction ban was still on. And then now they opened it up a little bit more, then they put another eviction. So they are controlling what's going to be happening within the housing industry in itself by preventing people from getting evicted. Because if they get evicted from private landlords' rental units, then they become a problem for the municipalities and the regions, and then they are now having to cover the cost in order to give some temporary shelter.
It's messed up.
So you might as well keep them in the private landlords than have them into, you know, the government.
It's so short-term minded because I'm on the Ontario Landlord Watch members group as well, and you see the frustration in people celebrate exiting real estate. Yeah. Exiting as in landlords are selling their rental properties. Yeah. And good chance some of them are bought by homeowners that are going to move in. Yeah. And then we remove rental supply from the system
completely, because these properties are being sold for $300,000 over asking price for a semi in Kitchener. Now, can you see that actually hitting the market ever as a rental?
Never.
No. These landlords are literally free. They feel like I've cashed out at a hot market. I'm now going to live, because it's not about, you know, the toilets and the renovations. This is about the stress that some of these tenants do put landlords under, and I don't think the government really sees that as a problem. I get it's a business, but a landlord should deserve some respect, just like any other business. And we really need the elected officials to treat private investors as a business. And then if they did, you might be able to see a little bit more love to the housing community.
And you raised these issues at the Housing Affordability Committee that you're on?
Honey, when I said I'm going on my tour, I'm gonna be on Erwin's podcast, and I'm like, it's an election year. I'm like, we need to get on as many
election month.
month. They're so quick. It's like, surprise, get your campaign out there. And I'm like, I gotta be out there doing the exact same thing, because housing is gonna be at the top of everyone's promises. And a lot of changes are going to happen. And it's not going to be in the favor of investors. It's going to be in favor of the tenants, because they believe that the tenants are the voters, because they're louder. But just like Acorn, they have a tenant activist group who is very well supported by the NDP party in how they get their voices out there and trying to get protected. But it's almost like you talk to big property management companies, which I do, because it's all about getting my knowledge of what your issues are so that we can brainstorm our solutions together. And they would talk about the non-payment of rent. They would talk about the screening, but they talk about pest control. And that's where you'll see landlord licensing coming in effect again, because you got tenants who are complaining about, bed bugs or cockroaches, but it's the way that the tenants are bringing them into the property, or B, not doing what is needed in order to treat the property properly.
Bed bugs are difficult to get rid of.
Yes.
You need a lot of cooperation from the occupant.
So because of that, it's bad landlord. So let's do some landlord licensing. They don't really have a deep understanding, and that's why not only of having a roundtable discussion, we need that roundtable discussion with landlords and tenants and property managers and realtors and accountants and you name it. Like, there needs to be that roundtable, besides the concept of big property management companies being able to have their voices heard.
Yeah, I recall seeing a presentation from a bug expert, specific to the presentation was on around bed bugs, but the root issue is the person who is living with the bed bugs, who's usually like ground zero for the bed bugs, usually has mental health issues. Right.
And
so it's not bad landlord. It's the person has problems, right?
I just talked to a gentleman today, and he said, when you look at how much it is to actually pay for any spraying of bugs or having a bug guy just go out, he's like, we've take people who are needing assistance with who they partner with different programs, and what happens is that this person does have mental health issues, and that there's imaginary bugs, invisible bugs that this person sees, and then they call 311 and tell them about these bugs that are in this unit, and 311 connects with the landlord to be like, how come you're not treating these bugs? And it comes down to the support of mental health is not there. The support for the people who are in desperate need of housing, the people who are on the streets, they don't have enough support. And if they did, we wouldn't be seeing the type of behavior and the down spiral, because this is getting worse. It's not getting better. I've been doing this for over 10 years, and the system is getting worse. The rents are getting higher. They have more people who are becoming homeless, and you got people now trying to relocate out of the major cities in order to find suitable accommodations. But until they start listening and respecting investors and working together, it's not going to ever get better.
So we're not going to beat up on the government all day.
Why not?
There are some
Why
things...
not? It's an election year. Come on, Aaron.
Election month.
We can do it. A monthly election month.
It's Friday the 13th.
I know, right?
Best guess is 5 weeks from today, right? That's the current rumor right now. 5 weeks we'll be voting. Crazy.
Anyone in Cambridge, vote for Connie Cody. She is running for MP. So for the Conservatives, so she's a really good friend of mine who has her head on straight, and I like seeing that, and I can't wait to see who is actually being elected in. I just hope that we have a new change, because I think we need that.
Yeah, I just had Michael Raz on my show. He's a real estate investor. He's a friend, and he has a good head on his shoulders. We know what the issues are.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know why. It's just some people seem to ignore what our real problems are and how the real solutions.
You know what it is? Too many hands in the cookie jar. We get too many hands. We have, like, if you have committees and you have councils and you have the assistant to the Minister of Housing, and then you have the Minister of Housing, and then all the people in their office, and you got to get through their gatekeepers, and by the time you get them and get to finally talk to them and tell them about the issues and give them some solutions, they're changed.
And that's
they it's all about the opportunities for many different people in government positions, and you need to have someone that really can put a plan in place. But being on certain committees is that there's always multiple different voices, and there's a lot of talking, but no action. And there needs to be an action. And a 10-year housing plan, when we have more and more people coming to our country every single year, is not good enough. They need to do more.
Way more. So I think it will help to have like-minded folks in government. That definitely can't hurt.
Well, how do you get someone in government? Like for yourself, like people who are, if are you gonna run? You give me that look. Are you gonna run?
I was trying to get you to run before.
No, you ain't. I ain't running.
$170,000 to be an MP.
I know. Did you see that? Now I know why people run. I'm like, why are they doing? Like, they really think about their community. I'm like, no, it's the money. It's the money. It's the pension.
For some. Michael's taking a pay cut to do it. My friend's taking a pay cut.
Oh, so what area is he? What area?
He lives in Mississauga, but he makes really good money. So if he becomes MP, he'll take a pay cut.
He's like a Donald Trump, huh? Is he?
Not quite. Now, okay, so unfair question, Kayla, because no one gets their questions in advance.
Yep.
So we talked about some things before we were recording. Like you said, you had an experience with the gentleman cutting the hardwire to their smoke alarm. Yeah. We talked about people being root causes of bed bugs and not helping resolve bed bug issues. Is that something LCB would help with, Landlord Credit Bureau? Is that something we could report?
Well, it's about the review process. So in reality is like whatever your review is going to be, it's going to be shared with your tenant. So be truthful in how you're leaving your review, because your tenants will always have access to their tenancy record in which you report it. Yeah.
Tenants snip the wire to their smoke alarm. Well, that's pretty factual, isn't it?
Well, you got to look at the concept of, here's my experience with this person. And the number one question in the review process is, would you rent to this person again? Right? And it's not only made for like delinquency or troubled tenants, it's also made for our good ones. Because if you have a tenant that pays on time every single month, even like a week before, you can only report that on the first of the month with Landlord Credit Bureau. Inside of the review section, you could say, my person paid me a week in advance, or they paid me 5 months in advance. Like, you can put such a good review that when another landlord does the tenancy search, or that landlord or that tenant wants to share that report to their next potential landlord, is that without a doubt you're going to give that information and they're going to accept them and secure their next rental unit. So I think that's where it's going to be made for, versus that they are absolutely horrible.
No,
and
that's not the only thing.
Smart,
that's not the only thing.
because they cut that wire through a building of 180 units, 500 tenants affected, and I walk through every single apartment and every bedroom. My feet, and I wore heels that day. Not cool.
So let's just take a step back. Can you, because I still tell people about Landlord Credit Bureau, and they look at me with like I'm crazy. They never heard of it before. Yeah. It's like saying I think it should be in the same conversation as like doing a credit check, right? You do a credit check, you get Landlord Credit Bureau. Yeah. Right. Every landlord should be using it, in my opinion. Unless other folks are having a different experience. If you are, let me know. But.
No, you know what? With Landlord Credit Bureau, it's a part of my...
Explain what it is.
So Landlord Credit Bureau is a agency or a bureau where you're actually able to report your tenant's monthly payment history to Landlord Credit Bureau. So it's good. If it's bad, you can also leave a review. Landlords are able to do tenancy searches. So you can put the tenant's name in there, and you only get charged if you get a hit on your tenant. And when you do get a hit, you have that option to download it and to pull up that information. Within that information, you're getting the tenant's payment history every single month to show that they were able to make their payments on time. And it also gives you the bottom, which it gives the landlord's email and the landlord's name. So you know that it's coming from a validated landlord. Because right now, as a reference comes to us, we have no clue who it is. Right. Is it the landlord, the sister, the brother? Right. So this way...
You're centralizing the reference system.
You're able to confirm these people by having them be able to tap in to actually see that, because they got to get validated in order to report. And after that, you got their credit checks that are literally, too bad I'm not saying it right now that their credit checks are live, but they have amazing credit checks that are coming from Equifax that now landlords are a part of. So we have to utilize Landlord Credit Bureau right from the tenant screening, because it's not so much of the concept that, you have a bad tenant, let's report that to Landlord Credit Bureau. We have to use Landlord Credit Bureau's name within our rental ads, because this is now going to bring serious tenants to you who are very serious about paying their rent on time. You're also going to attract more good tenants tenants in a way that you're going to be able to report that to their Equifax and grow their score. And many people who are in rentals, they always have that dream of owning their own home. So let's get ourselves into informing them about it so that they can now get known and they can actually refer their next landlord, if it's not you, to report. And this is where the concept is that we're going to divide that bad tenant and good tenants. We have to put ourselves in that there is many and we need to reward them. And by doing that, you're doing that with Landlord Credit Bureau. But when I do my tenant screening and I have someone that's inside of my rental unit and they're coming in and I said it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever the case going on, they go, oh, I love it. I want to fill an application. I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, I also report your monthly payment history to Landlord Credit Bureau. So this is going to help you grow your credit, but it also could affect it if you don't pay on time. But it's not going to be you though. You're going to pay on time. I know you are. So here's some more information about it.
I love how you deliver it. I love how you deliver it.
And you see their face. Like if I wanted to do like a video live broadcast from a tenant screening, because when they get to see their face when you know that they're going to be behind on rent and they know what you're asking from them, their face, oh, okay. And they're gone. That application does not come back. I swear, I think they're running to their car. I was like, hurry up, we got to get the next one. Right. And you know what? We're not trying to do this to be mean. We're not trying to do this to be difficult. We're not trying to do this to make the housing, the affordable housing and the homelessness to be worse. But when you see that you have properties that are a lot of money and that you can see that you can lose a lot of money and your house and your own credit, you have to make sure you're doing proper screening.
And we'll keep more landlords in the game.
Oh, definitely. It's about the accountability. We don't have that accountability. And luckily for us...
It's just fair, isn't it? That rent...
Fair.
And I'll just preface this by saying, like, all my residential tenants, I'd rent to them again, right? So I'm pretty lucky in that I like all my tenants. I'd gladly give them a glowing review. And again, I rent to them again. Maybe not the rents they're paying me right now, because I have one basement I'm renting it for $1,200 because that's like one of the first legal basement apartments, right? And like that, yeah, it's like
they're staying with you for life.
They're never leaving. That's okay, because this is what we agreed upon.
Yeah.
Right. And she's a nurse, right? She had to go battle COVID in the hospital, right? So I'm not raising the rent. She's a good person, right?
Yeah.
And she pays her rent on time. This was the agreement. This is what we agreed upon. Anyways, I don't even raise the rent on her. Anyways, where was I? And then I frame Landlord Credit Bureau to my clients and my tenants that this will help you eventually buy a home, which is, statistically, you're less likely to be poor if you own a home, right? Like, I don't believe anyone should be tenants for life. It's why I do what I do, investing for my family. But then to me, that's for the greater good. The sooner you stop paying me rent and you buy a house, I'm actually happy.
Oh yeah.
On two ways, because you're better off. My tenant will be better off. They're no longer a tenant, and also I get a vacancy and I can re-rent it for current market rent. So
win-win.
Yeah, win-win.
Now the only thing is that you could do you have your good tenants right now. Do you have any past tenants?
Yeah.
You can report them up to going back 6 years in Canada and 7 years in the States. So no judgment, no consent needed. But if you had a tenant that was late on their rent, late on their utilities, or didn't pay at all, you can report that into Landlord Credit Bureau as well.
Because I actually literally know, because when duplexes became were they a new thing, and then I think the LTDB didn't know what to do with utilities. You sign an agreement with the tenant that they're responsible for XYZ utility, and then they don't pay it.
Oh.
And then the utility company just charges you, and then you have to take them to small claims and stuff like that. But you don't need to go to small claims and get a judgment to report it to LCB, do you? No.
And this is something that actually is going to come back. Hopefully, I'm hearing rumors of back to council with the water billing. So as the water billing hits your property taxes, we used to be able to, issue an N5, try to get the eviction that way. New changes with the Landlord and Tenant Board allow you to really detail how your utility arrangement is worked up. If it was a 60-40 split, if it was, over a usage cap within your utility, and now you can utilize that, and they will give you a judgment of it with the Landlord and Tenant Board. But hey, if you can have this part going, hey, I'm showing you through your tenancy record that I reported your missed payment for rent and utilities, this is going to follow you until the payment has been made. So this is obviously when you need a car, if you need a house, if you need, sometimes they end up getting, rent to own stuff. They're always doing like credit checks on you. Yeah. So it's really crucial I never thought, like when I used to work in collections back in the day, I think, oh my God, almost 17 years ago. And I worked for Capital One, and that was a lot in the States, and their credit was so important, and we never really had that feel. I found in Canada at that time. And now your credit is so important these days. The higher the score, the rating, what's on there, like it's very detailed. And I think everyone needs to, stop and breathe for a moment and do your own credit check to make sure that, your identity hasn't been taken on. But it's definitely something that people are looking at trying to grow better, because even though you might be priced out of your rental market where you live now, it doesn't prevent you from relocating and finding a property that is in your price range, and having a fresh start, right? And you never know where the market's going to be now with rental housing. It might drop a little bit too, so you want to be ready with good credit.
Now people who've been able to collect rent from past tenants because they filed reports on their Landlord Credit Bureau.
Oh, yeah, because they get notified right away. That's the power I find with LCB, is that as soon as you create your tenancy record, you can put your tenant's email in there. So one, you're informing them, A, what Landlord Credit Bureau is all about, and B, you're able to educate them how it's going to help them or how it's going to impact them. And then you have your concept of, hey, your landlord just reported you to be unpaid. This is how it's going to, travel with you, especially if a landlord is reporting your delinquency as a collect. As a past tenant, you change them from a current residence to a former one, and now it's being reported to Landlord Credit Bureau and Equifax underneath collect. So it stays there until the payment has been made, and they will get notified of it. And again, it's going to follow them, and they're eventually going to want to move, and everyone's doing credit checks. And I'm proud of that now, because, a lot of landlords...
Good Lord, people who don't.
They haven't. Oh my God. It's like, it's not a spit in a handshake anymore. That's, you should see some...
Is that a Newfie thing?
And no, I don't know if it's a Newfie thing.
I've never spat in a handshake.
No one's spitting with COVID now anyway, so I guess that terminology's gone. But is he laughing at me? So now that some of these contracts are coming to me, and there's no paperwork, there's not even an application, or it's just the application, and that was the actual lease. This was the back in the day type of investing, and you get to see the back in the day type of investing and what they did, and how we have our new bloods who are learning more about real estate and how to pick tenants and how to manage it and grow it. They are the ones that are now changing the industry of how people are getting accepted, because they're learning a lot quicker than the people who used to actually invest.
Oh, as we're talking about credit reports, I remember if you when it makes the news about some tenant who's like swindled like 8 landlords or something, and they're like, I remember one, he's going to jail because he's
recent post today.
No, this was a while ago.
Oh.
But then if you read the article, usually it's near the bottom. Basically, it says landlord did not do rent credit checks.
No.
It's like, oh, gee, these guys shot themselves in the foot.
I don't know how they don't do it, unless it's about knowledge, right? When you get yourself into a program, it's either you have many different type of places where you can potentially pull an Equifax or a TransUnion credit check. Now, are you taking TransUnion or are you taking Equifax? I like Equifax. I find it to be a little bit more detailed, but in order for you to start doing that, you got to be validated. And some places that take on your membership to be able to pull credit, they have to go through their process that may not feel that you're legit. So right. Unless people know of these places and they're out there advertising that they do credit checks, these landlords are not getting the information. They're not getting the information of the different products and the different services that are out there to help them navigate through this crazy system and to protect themselves before it gets into chaos.
Right. And so I'll say in terms of private services, I think it's never been better for the landlord.
Oh, if there's I got a couple of people I can't wait to talk about, because you know what, I'm doing that screening process. I'm getting to know them, make sure it's legit, if it's allowed. But there are many different companies now seeing that there is this need in the housing community of services of protection, and that's what I'm able to do in my advocacy. I like to know of these different products and services, because a lot of my phone calls or emails or messages on Facebook, it's people in hardship situations. So if I can help them navigate through the RTA or the LTB or connect them to a paralegal, I now have the option to know of different products and different services that also might be able to help them through their real estate journey.
The crazy thing is you do a lot of this for free. I can't convince you to run for MP and make 170 grand.
Oh my God. I don't think they would want me. Like, you see how they would, you can't just say I'm going to run for MPP and the Conservative Party is going to be like, all right, she's our girl right there. She's going to be like, no, she's like a ticking time bomb. We have no clue what she's going to say. She has her entire life on Facebook for the last 11 years. We can't clean that up. We can't polish her. The Liberals are going to go after her. Like, she's not good. Let's not touch her. Like, and you know what? Even if we're turning this show into a comedy. No, I think if it looks at me doing what I do for free and advocating and becoming that community leader, or becoming a community leader with a paycheck would be nice. At that type of money, I think they need a cut. Someone needs to pull back how much money these people get. But those counselors and those regional counselors and those MPPs, they have just as much trouble trying to stand up for their constituents as I am, right? And they get paid to do it. I don't. But you know what? I also am able to meet with different people and have that opportunity to, do other type of businesses together. But it's not, we have to work together as a community to finally champion a good change of different rules and procedures that are making it fair. And luckily, if anyone is listening, and if you ever had to go through the Landlord and Tenant Board and you went through these type of delays, you need to contact the Ontario Ombudsman to make your complaint. The Ontario Ombudsman has been actively investigating them for well over a year. You can see a lot of the changes happening at the Landlord and Tenant Board now, I feel, is because of the Ombudsman and because they have an open door policy to connect with groups of stakeholders to get their recommendation. And we have to keep that momentum up. Even though you called and complained once because of that one situation, but if you continue to keep having situations, we need them to contact the Ontario Ombudsman to make that complaint, because the Landlord and Tenant Board is denying justice delayed is justice denied, and that is what's happening at the Landlord and Tenant Board. We're being denied justice, and it's supposed to give justice to all parties, all users, and it tends to just favor the tenants because of the way that these adjudicators are ruling, or how they're trying to adjourn an actual hearing to give the tenant more time. And if you look at who they are online of the adjudicator, you see their past life of whatever they did has obviously affected the way that they rule. So you always want to know who you're up to bat with whenever you're at the Landlord and Tenant Board.
How does one get in contact with their ombudsman?
So if you Google Ontario Ombudsman in Ontario,
OMBUDS.
Don't get me started. I usually have a talk and text.
Right.
So it's a OMBUND. Oh, can we go
Google will fix it.
Ombudsman. OMBUND.
Because I remember TAREI made a complaint to the Ontario Ombudsman when I won't name which bank, but they had our posted checks from our tenants. Right, because they would deposit them each month, and then they lost them. They did an investigation. They said they lost them again.
So you're dealing with the banking ombudsman.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think as soon as we complained, I think within a week, someone pretty high up from that bank called, and they got involved. And they were much more responsive than what we were getting at the branch.
So I actually have a case that I'm helping a family member out with where there was fraudulent activity that was happening. So you have to go through the fraud department, then you got to go to the claims department, then you got to go to the TD ombudsman, and then if you don't get what you want there, then you got to go to the banking ombudsman. So the banking system is one way of, like, you get to see their levels, but for us with the housing and the government, it's literally just Google Ontario Ombudsman, and you'll be able to it's like info at ombudsman.ca to get the email, and they call you. So when you put your email in there and you give them the letter of what's happening, they'll actually call you to follow up on that because they want to make sure that you're real. And it's great.
Fair, yeah.
And they call you a lot quicker than the Landlord and Tenant Board or your MPP will, except mine. My MPP is awesome. Belinda Carlios.
When's the provincial election?
Oh, next year?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one's next year.
Okay.
But the Conservatives kicked her out because she didn't want to stand with them. So that's why I like her. And Randy Hilliard. Like, it's like all the misfits. Like, going to be able to pull them all together. And that's going to be the new party that we need to really represent the people.
It's messy.
It's
At all
sad.
levels.
It's sad. Like, I think they worry about trying to get people to come out and vote, and they're like, hey, look at how sad our voter turnout is. I was like, well, when you just are just giving them lip service, like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, a lot of people have lost their faith in their government, that they rather not vote at all, and the only ones that are voting is people who are involved heavily with the parties, right? And I think that's where you're growing your membership, great, but a lot more needs to be done to really try to engage your community into voting. Besides, hey, we want to give you some roads, and we want to try to give you some free money and up your baby bonus. It's like, thanks.
We're going to build an apartment building.
Yeah, that is a lot more money than you just giving me the money, and I can create a much cheaper project for you guys.
I don't even want the money. And you don't need to give me the money. I'll go build my garden suite if you give it to me by right.
Yeah, I give it to me by right, give it to me without jumping hoops, and create that system that I need. Because right now they give us a tool bag, but there's no tools inside of it. So we got to be our own people and bring our own tools in there.
And they put some brick walls in front of us.
And some like fire-breathing dragons and.
You know what? We barely talked about Ontario Landlord Watch.
You know what? It's that group is going really strong with over 6,100 members in that group. We have 2,500 members. I've been letting them in, but they keep on coming, and it's great because I have to go in so many times throughout the month, and I like to screen people before they come in. And I definitely, if I'm on a podcast, so if anyone's listening now and you've heard and you want to be a part of this group and you like the mission that we're on, say that where you heard of Ontario Landlords Watch, so I can get them in quicker. But we have to be very careful because we're not here to bash tenants. We're here to know the issues, know the solutions, and follow with our elected officials who are in the group.
Support landlords, support
the good tenants. And I help tenants on the phone all the time. They think I'm the Landlord and Tenant Board. They're like, is this the Landlord and Tenant Board? I'm like, no, it's Ontario Landlords Watch, but I'm here to help you. What's going on, right? And I can guide them and give them the tools that they need. And the members are so knowledgeable. They've been in our group for, well over 10 years now. So they got to learn so much by other landlords' mistakes. Sadly, it is, but we're all learning together, and we're able to help navigate and again, support their celebrations of getting out of the industry at the same time. So in the group in itself is that we have that momentum, because as people are getting help with the day-to-day operation, they're understanding how heavily involved the government is, and they're making their calls to the Ombudsman. They're making their calls to the MPP and their regional councillors and trying to fight. And the news gets to travel quicker, and that's what I love about it, because I had no clue how to get my little petition that I created in 2010 out there. I was traveling to the landlords associations that just taught you about the system of what you should be doing, and here's a program. And I had to travel there and be like, hey, you want to sign my petition? Now when they didn't know about it when I was telling them about the water billing, and now this time when a landlord licensing, if water billing, if Safe Toronto program comes into effect, or an eviction ban comes, the news is out there instantaneously. Right. We almost created our own little media source, because of 6,100 members there's other groups out there, and that message gets spread very quickly. And
so members know about Hamilton, Ward 1 and 8, with the licensing pilot project?
that blew up right off the bat. Soon as that came out, we knew, and again, we had landlords knowing about it when it was in the thinking process, and they're going down and they're trying to fight it. And that's why elected officials were like, okay, let's do a pilot. You know, we're not going to freak everybody out. We're just doing a pilot, and it's going to be inside of the university section, which is just going to cause the rents to increase.
They're going
to
discriminate.
Yeah. Don't discriminate, guys. Okay, we're discriminating against you guys. Because we know we give you guys the money for some, you know, your student loans and stuff, so let it come back to us some way. But yeah, they definitely, they were trying to fight it, and now they're doing the pilot for 2 years, and then every landlord in Hamilton start talking about it, start figuring out what we have to do to fight back for when this comes up in 2 years, and they realize that what has happened. You got to keep track on, you know, collect some data to find out how much the rents have increased in that area because of it, and did it actually work? You know, talk to the tenants, get something on writing to say, hey, here's my tenant, you know, obviously their rents have increased, but this program did nothing for them because they knew they still had the protection through bylaw, through the Residential and Tenancy Act and Landlord and Tenant Board and the fire department.
And property standards and the health department, like there's lots of help.
Oh, everything. There's lots of it. It's just, it's a game for them. It's another service. It's another way for them to gain some money. And I think that's why they call
they're
it
gonna
the
lose
cash
money.
I think they're gonna lose money based on the operating cost of it. But I think when you look at what maintenance calls could come in, if the landlord doesn't complete it, then the city can come in and complete the work and build that way. They're like the maintenance team, I think, of the housing that they're trying to become. I don't know. It's, you want to get inside their head.
Right.
It's like, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
It's like that TikTok.
I do have one friend, they got a property standards called on them for a chimney, and they didn't get to it in time, so the city fixed it. And the city actually fixed it for cheaper than the quotes they had.
What?
So there was a win.
I had a guy, the neighbors call about his grass being long and it's an empty lot, and it's just
Well, that's usually bad.
$700. I'm like, oh my God, man, I cut it for you for $100. I'm like, are you serious? So you get to see how different municipalities, and it's a different feel. Every municipality is different. Some are very investor friendly, and some are like, oh my God, how are you going to have housing, and how are you paying your people are not going to be able to pay taxes to you if you don't have people coming to your city.
Well, here's the unintended consequence, because if they, for example, if they restrict bedrooms, say they restrict it to like 4 bedrooms, for example, then they're going to force students to go further away, and so they're going to sprawl out to other wards. That's just reality, because they'll need to seek affordability, and there's not enough supply. Right.
That's what they are. Why are you looking at landlord licensing and making sure that it's not overcrowding? But it's it's the affordability of housing for people to live on their own, and the supply is not there. So they do have to move in together with multiple people, even though it's a basement and the windows are not big enough. It's an unsafe environment. What do you expect them to do? Yeah. So you got to build that supply up, and you have rules of your first year you can live in residence. After that, they tell you that you can't live in residence. Yeah. So the rules and the regulations of what they're doing with the school can also affect this. And how come no one's telling the universities to build more so that people can live in residence? So I don't know. It's again, I think there's a manipulation to it, and you got to get inside their head to figure out how, because it's going to cost you a lot more money to run the program in itself, and knowing that you're just doing duplicates of services, and that's what's happening. We have duplicates of services, just like property standards, landlord licensing. It's the same thing. The only thing is that they usually come when they're called, not like, hey, let's go around and knock on these doors today and let's see if they're licensed or not. Like what's the main goal here? Because it's not keeping people safe. It's actually just going to cause the rents to increase and cause more of a population, our population to become homeless, and more people to struggle and try to get ahead in life.
Do you have any insight what it's going to be in Hamilton? What the pilot's going to look like? What they're going to restrict? What they're going to enforce?
I haven't gotten that down path on my memory. That they have give some tidbits out there of how it's because they're all looking at each other. They look at each other from city to city, region to region. And they also now look from Ontario is famous for looking at other provinces, and they are now obviously trying to represent BC the way BC handles their overall dispute resolution program. I wish they did it as Newfoundland, because Newfoundland's a lot more simpler. They have the landlord, they have the tenant, there's no paralegals, and it's $25 to file. So you get to see that they will eventually it's going to be all the same minor sometimes it's the whole entire city, sometimes it's just a school, but it's in like Waterloo, it's the inspection for plumbing, it's the
inspection.
the HVAC inspection, and then it's per room, and they've actually just increased their fees in Waterloo. So I've actually had a few landlords now get out of their single family home as a rental because they've increased it because of the rooms. And now they're getting out of Waterloo and looking into other investor-friendly cities.
Right. And then the house usually is bought by a homeowner.
Yep.
So then the rental supply is gone.
Oh, yeah. It's a domino effect. We call it the mass exodus, but it's a mass exodus where you're not going to really quite notice it right away of the field because it's because capital gains, right? So a lot of people are just doing it, getting rid of their supply slowly. But a lot of people are trying to maneuver out of that.
Here's the other crazy part, because like you said, why doesn't the schools build more residents? Mm-hmm. So McMaster, they bought like all the houses across the street from mine, and they're going to build, I think, like 8 stories or something like that. And the neighbors all fought it as well.
Yeah.
We don't want more students. Like, okay, wait, hang on. We're getting them out of the neighborhood into one building.
Mm-hmm. We're containing
Still
the
not
problem.
Happy. It's too tall. They just basically say no to everything.
We have a big development trying to come in right on the river in Cambridge, and people were complaining about our homeless population. We talk about our supply, our drug use that's happening within the city. But now that someone wants to come in and try to build 900 units, and it's going to take down some trees, and it's going to be in the way of our beautiful river that we walk upon, communities live it, and they don't want it.
Right.
And then they go, well, is it really going to be affordable? And what they consider affordable is really not affordable, but it's still going to be affordable. And they designate only so many units. So as a way for them to push their development through, they have to try to promise some affordable units within that development.
Right.
And that usually allows it to kind of get pushed a little bit further. But the community is really, up in arms with it. They're like, no. It's like, well, we need to build somewhere. I don't think the country is going to be a good place for us to be building right now.
Because the bus doesn't go there.
The bus doesn't go there. Our services don't go there. So it's got to be in the downtown core, in which more people don't want. They're like, it's not Toronto. This is our little small city. And heritage, like the heritage is crazy. The movies that come in to actually record there is phenomenal because of the character of that city. So I get that, but at the same time, they block the entire downtown when they're recording.
Right.
I want to get downtown.
Yeah, housing's more important.
And I think it's been neglected for many, many years, decades.
Yeah, and it's not just the government's fault; it's the voters as well.
For voting for a certain party.
Voting people who won't help create more housing.
It's about trying to figure out what's important to the voter. Right. And that's what they always do through their campaigns. That's why they knock at your door and they find out what's important to you. And if you say, I want cheaper taxes, or I want, more parking downtown, or, and then
I want you to stop the development.
And people don't have that concept, the knowledge of who's who. You have municipal and regional and provincial and federal government. People don't know what each level of government does. So it's really hard for them to choose the best candidate that's going to represent their needs or the needs that they think they need. Mm-hmm. But there's an overall goal of running government like a family, and that's where you have your housing, you have your food, you have your bill, your utilities, and your necessities, and anything left over is extra. I find that our city, we went and put $15,000 for a rainbow sidewalk.
15,000?
It is the most horrible.
Did they tear it out and put a new one in?
I can't even say this without laughing, because the sidewalk was just painted.
It's just paint.
It was just paint. And then we looked at another city, and their rainbow sidewalk was beautiful. And ours was like, what happened? It looks so bad. But they spent they paid a security guard, I think it was $2,000 to guard a bridge of blankets. And are the homeless taking the blankets? Give them the blankets. It's nice artwork. Take some pictures. Let's remember it. But if someone wants to take a blanket, why are we hiring? So it's a lot of the wasted funds, lack of priority, and it's more of the concept that we have to look at the major issues that we have here. I hate the fact that we get a pothole, and the roads need to get done, but we have people who are dying on the street. we need more services for people who are struggling for mental health, people who are struggling with addiction. And that is now the new wave of from the pandemic, is people who are addicted through drug use as well as mental health. And there's not enough support there. I was just at a protest myself, trying to stop a safe injection site from coming in right into a residential area. And the people are like, the community to get together and to fight and to walk from one potential site to another potential site with counselors as well. This is something where they think that it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, right? That's what they're really trying to do here, because even though you create a site for people to consume safe, illegal drugs, you're enabling their behavior. You're not trying to protect them, but we have a wait list of well over 11 months getting into rehab, but you are going to give them a place to inject drugs safely. Like the backwardness is like, you should want to get them off of it. It's not put your money into getting them off of it instead of just enabling it. And they do that with housing. Like the way that their thinking process is, I don't know. I would run.
I can't wrap my head around
it. I wouldn't want to run for council, but I would love to see how the mechanics work. Like who is actually calling it? Because I don't think it's not even the counselors. You know what I mean? Like we all think like, oh, bad counselor. You got to look at city staff. You got to look at the staff who are behind the elected officials, because they can't be everywhere. They can't get the knowledge. They can't do the reports. So sometimes I wish they could change up their staff as well. We're getting all over the topics today, hey?
I'm glad I can't make these decisions. I don't understand it.
It's all linked, from housing to mental health to drug addiction. Like we all feel that, I think that's where we get into the advocacy and trying to fight for landlords' rights, because when we try to help people and we get burned and it takes us a year to get someone evicted who is struggling, and there's not enough support for them. So that's why when people ask me like, oh, why are you talking about homelessness or affordable housing or mental health or drug addiction? I'm like, it's all linked. It's a whole puzzle that we should be looking at here to solve versus just one thing at a time. It all needs to be simultaneously if we're really going to make an impact and change the community for the better.
Here's one model that works, but sorry, I don't want to say it. I can't say if it works, but it's actually been pretty good. In Hong Kong, for example, they have over 1 million people in government subsidized housing. Over 1 million in a city of 7 million, right? And how they do it, when a developer wants to build something, like you mentioned, the developer you mentioned in the story, they had to create a certain amount of affordable housing.
Yeah.
Well, think of it where in Hong Kong, for example, like everything's at least 30 stories. So if this developer is allowed to build as tall as he wants or taller, like the government can just say, no, building next 2 more floors and I'll make that all affordable housing. The developer will do it.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because they'll be able to make their money and probably some, and they'll be able to afford some affordable housing for the community.
Yeah, and you know what? When you look at, like, sometimes we have problem areas, right? So if you have people with complex issues, I don't think it's a good thing to congregate them together.
Right. Here's the crazy part: the crime rates in those government housing is actually very low.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, Hong Kong?
Yeah.
We're going to Hong Kong. We gotta go talk. We gotta figure out exactly how it's.
Cherry's family grew up in there, and your family spent some time in government-assisted housing as well.
Yeah.
You guys weren't criminals, were you?
No, but you know what's happening though? I think there's that loophole that people found within that system to get in. Like I just moved into one of the areas in Cambridge, and there is a government housing complex right by my house, and they have nicer cars than me. They have nicer cars than me.
Yeah, and a lot of our tenants have nicer stuff than us.
Are they visiting? Like, and you know what? I know friends. I have friends who are in housing as well, and I'm telling you, like they have a spouse. The spouse doesn't live there. No one has it on record, but they make money, right? And they have company trucks, And you know what? They have a fluctuation because it's not all low income. They also have income units that are rent geared to income, or it's like market rent. So they're actually getting paid, really good money from the people who have really good jobs who actually claim their money, but many people do tend to abuse it. And there's not a system that really helps them determine if someone is in government housing who really shouldn't be there. And do we really need people who are just struggling to pay rent? Just someone who needs a little bit of a top up, to pay rent elsewhere in normal, private housing. So government housing could be there for people who need that wraparound system, because we have affordable housing and we have supportive housing. And then we have like us over here with, high end, we have different high end type of rental units. So that's where we like to see getting to understand what's happening in government housing, what the waiting list is like for government housing. I just know that it's 12 years wait time for someone with a disability to get into housing.
Terrible.
That's because it's accessible. They need accessible housing. Now, if you're a landlord or a government, it should be like, well, let's get a program. Let's get a program that if you are willing to make your unit accessible, we're going to give you X amount of money in order to make that rental unit accessible so that we can create more accessibility for people in need. But now we have people who are living in shelters because they have an elevator, living at the shelter because they can't find accessible housing. So we really want to look at how they're running their own government housing, because everyone's seen many articles about, places needing a ton of renovations, because it's not about building it. It's about maintaining it and supplying it and subsidizing it. We have landlords and investors who are very good at what they do and create secondary suites within months. Why don't you just give them the tools and the support that they need to continue to keep doing that? But instead, they like to just poke their nose in our business, but not look at what's going on behind closed doors for them and how much it's costing them to run it.
It's not easy.
It's different. It's to make your head think about, it's like a clock, it makes everything else move. And, even with, this water billing that we started, I said, now we have people being evicted from it. You see it as a great way for the city to make money from water bills. But what just happened is that you're now, as a city, paying more money for shelters, emergency shelters, and helping people to get it off the street because they got evicted because they fell behind on a water bill. So doing something for a short-term gain and having long-term pain to it is what's the struggle.
So are you still investing?
Not right now.
Are you divesting?
No, I'm comfortable. We bought these properties that we bought for from 2004 all the way up until 2 years ago, and now the market just kind of went crazy. So my husband's at I'm not competing. If he finds a good deal and it's off market, I'll look at it. He is looking at something potentially off market, some type of 39 units. They found out about it like last year, and I guess this year is supposed to be the year that he's now, or next year, 2022. So he's kind of looking at that. So he's got a lot of equity. We don't really do the BRRRR. We actually hold on to the equity in the property right now because we bought so much with just saving up the down payment and then buying it again. So we got a lot of equity within our property. So we're just waiting for the bigger one to come. But I do like my duplexes and triplexes and fiveplexes. Like I like the quality of tenants that I'm able to choose from when I get to offer that type of rental unit versus apartment buildings are just a different style of living.
Right. So for the novice, like, what is the difference in the tenant profile between a small multi versus a large 39? I consider pretty big.
I think it's like new. I think you get the new tenants. So the new tenants who are just moving out on their first time, like just need a house, like they're inside of the apartments, or you got people from the big city, willing to move into the apartments. But I like the people who are looking at, paying their own utilities, and it's like they live in their own home. You have a door, you control your own heat, and they're just happier people to deal with because you're giving them what they want. They have an area where they can barbecue. You're not outside in the field barbecuing, so you're giving a little bit more quality of a home by being able to invest in those type of properties.
And the tenant has to be able to afford more.
Pardon?
I imagine the tenant has to afford more for a small multi versus being in an apartment building.
Yeah, the apartments tend to be like, Well, those tenant apartments are creeping up in price for sure because the utilities are all included, and it's not really like you can do a utility cap on there. So those type of properties that I have, definitely you can work yourself into. Hey, you pay for your own utilities. You're doing all the increases. But if you do have it where it's plus hydro and the water and the gas is included, then you can put yourself into a utility cap within your lease agreement, and making sure that it's a fair, reasonable cap, so that if it does go over, it just really exercises the concept that you need to conserve the utilities, and you can't invite everybody and anybody in here to do laundry. Yeah. And you're gonna think twice before you allow someone to come into your home and live with you, because in Ontario, unless it's overcrowding, we can't do anything about it.
What do you cap utilities at?
Well, with the water and gas only, it's usually around the 300 mark. And if we have all three in there, then it's usually around the 400 mark.
Good tip. Yeah, prices have gone up, right?
When you got the city increasing your taxes and your utilities through the pandemic, but you tell me I can't raise my rents through a pandemic, yeah, we have to find different ways to be able to make the numbers work. Even from parking, charging for parking, charging for, air conditioning, window systems, and those prices, obviously increasing as well. So you have to get... People are switching out their coin-operated, the washer and dryers for like duplexes. If there was like a common area, people are switching them out for, coin-operated, just to help out. The times have changed.
Tough.
They are tough. We're lucky, but I feel so bad for people who are forced to deal with the effects of the market and the involvement of different rules and policies changing.
Mm-hmm. I don't think people understand that as investors, we want more. Not all investors, but for myself, I want to see more housing. Like, I would like to see rents and prices come down. I'd like to see more housing supply.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, all these restrictions are actually good for us existing landlords.
You want to see the supply, because with the supply, then we don't have to pay for so much now for government housing, because we have to pay for that. Right. So we do need to see an influx, and it's going to be good. But a lot of landlords too, when they're buying up a property that they just bought, and it's crazy numbers, you see the numbers, how much these houses are going for. So they have to put the rent as high as it is to try to even, break even.
Yeah, good luck, yeah.
Not even cash flow,
even,
and then they wait for the appreciation on it. So for us, it's more like we need to put it to that. Mm-hmm. And in order to, how do you control that market of stopping houses from selling at this type of crazy cost? And people are coming in now still in this market asking for, giving firm offers, cash. And I'm like, what? Yeah. People don't do cash. It's just called firm, isn't it? I wouldn't be able to do it. But we do have to create that supply, but there's so many different things that need to be fixed before we can kind of create that supply. Right. And they have to come up with the proper messaging from the proper people who have a deep understanding, because I find, no disrespect if he's actually listening, because he might listen to this, but the Minister of Housing, Steve Clark, I think he's more on the Minister of Municipal Affairs. He's not so much of the housing side of him. I think he's really good at the whole municipal affairs. He's one of the youngest mayors that he was before he was, in his position. But I don't think he has a deep understanding of the housing needs or the solutions, or the housing needs, the issues and the solutions. Right. So that's why I do what I do and get on Facebook Lives, meet with people, talk to people, go and be a part of the stakeholders meeting with the Landlord and Tenant Board. Mm-hmm. And as the election coming up, because that's when everyone wants to hear from you, is when there's an election. And even though it's federal, it's still, they have their national housing strategy. And, it's always about, here's some money to the province passes it to the region goes and gives it to all these people. And unless they're giving it out to the right people in the right places, that's where you got to look and see what the problem is there. Because I would love to have like a national housing bureau, and where that it's one location, it's in your city, you get to, apply for housing if you need it, apply for government assistance if you have a housing unit that you want to fill, and put it on their bulletin for people. It's got to be a central hub, because we have the Mental Health Association that has its own housing list. Women who are abused, you have your own housing list. People who are on disability or needs accessibility, we need a hub to see, how many landlords do we have in our area? How many units do we have? How many people are coming into this city every single month or year? We need to know we can accommodate, and what areas do we need growth in? That's the part that they don't know, and they just wait for someone to come to the city and say, I like this area. I can buy this property area, this land, and I can develop. Are you going to let me? That's what they wait for. They got to be more savvy as staff and go look for it and go and try to sell the city.
Kayla, we're running out of time. How can people follow and or support what you're trying to do?
One is they can join Ontario Landlords Watch Facebook group. It's free. Everyone can come in and get to know the members and, of course, watch our Facebook Lives there. They can email me at olwlandlords@gmail.com and, support the movement, bringing the awareness to Landlord Credit Bureau. Everyone can, get onto landlordcreditbureau.com. Then it's .ca if you're in the Canadian area, and register. This is our community that we are throwing ourselves into so that we can protect each other and reward our good tenants at the same time. Because my motto has always been is bringing a fair and balanced housing system to Ontario for good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers. And I think as long as we continue to keep educating ourselves on the rules and the procedures and getting to know other landlords and tenants' needs and understanding them, we can create the solution. But we can only do it with the government's involvement and their help. So if they want to see this, get better, they can call me.
Any other final words?
This is great. I love this. This is like a.
I know you love to talk.
I love to talk. That's the newfie in me. That's the newfie. When you're away from the kids and you got 4 kids at home and you're just like, you can hear yourself speak. It's like, keep going, keep going. But I want to thank you for doing what you do, because I love your posts and your motivation. Because I can come on here and be like a Debbie Downer and tell you about the horror stories and how it's in chaos a bit. But you know what? It's still a really good industry to be in. It's a great way to teach your tenants, because even though those tenants may not be able to get their own home right now, that does not stop them from potentially renting a home and renting out rooms in that home, and they become the landlord themselves to get ahead. It's about that education to them to get them a little further in life as well. And we don't have enough education on how to be in real estate, how to grow in real estate, or how to work the residential and tenancy act or Landlord and Tenant Board. Education is the key, and communication is the key for any success story for the rental housing. So it's just about getting that formatted, put it all together in one hub. And I think there is hope. We just need to hope we have a change in power.
No, it's not hope. Let's go vote.
We got
provincial level, I don't know what to do. It's just such a mess. Okay, I want to thank you for all that you do. You started Ontario Landlord Watch just a grassroots level, just to support landlords at the grassroots. Like we have issues, we need to get together. Right? And that's one of the things about OLW that's great, is that we need to get together, because then our voices are louder that way, right? And then, like you said, communicate, so we're all aware of the issues. Hey, this city's introducing licensing, right? We all need to know this, because all cities look at other cities and they'll copycat.
Oh yeah.
Right?
They're bad for copycatting each other. And it is. It's like we're bringing the landlords, the property managers, the real estate agents, and the paralegals, and even some of our landlords are actually tenants themselves in the group. So you get to see that by bringing all the voices together, the part is missing. And that's why our goal is now to, host another online conference. We usually do it in person, but we're going to have the 5 major regions, the director of housing for 5 major regions come to this conference. We want them to tell us what they think the number one housing issue is, what the solution is to that issue, and I want them to explain a government program that encourages a developer or a private investor to invest, or a government program that is there to help tenants through a hardship. That's my challenge to them.
When is this?
That I'm hoping for October 7th. But life has been absolutely crazy. I have 2 out of 5 regions who are willing to take part in this. There's no forcing them. As soon as I explain to them, this is what I want you to come and talk. We have other regions within the province of Ontario, and they can certainly reach out to the region, the director who I want to speak, to make sure their voices are heard as well. But they're all going to be invited to this online conference in order for us to connect ourselves together with the elected officials, because we have a heart. We're not here to just keep evicting people and ask for faster eviction. We're here to really make Canada great, and to make sure that we're looking out for one another. We're building that housing community even stronger.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.